good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Food Nutrition Mythbusters with Dr. Akua Woolbright, our Nutrition Program Director here at Whole Cities Foundation. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to pop them into the chat, or you can use the Q&A feature and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. Before we get started, if you haven't done so already, please put your name again in the chat and where you're joining us from, because we like to see where everybody is from, and put a name to the place. Also, be sure to check out our team member resources page for upcoming events. I'll add a link to the chat. And for those of you who haven't had the privilege of attending a session led by Dr. Akua Woolbright, it's just like a fun conversation with a great friend. So have a seat, turn up the volume, and get ready for Nutrition Mythbusters.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. And welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to see you guys coming into this space today as we talk about nutrition myths. I'm going to just give you a disclaimer up front. I'm going to try to get through a lot of information, so I'm going to be going really quickly. So maybe grab a pen and paper, jot down a few notes, and at the end, we will put a brief recap in the chat so that you can, have, a review of everything I've gone through today. And of course, if you have any nutrition questions that you will be curious to have the answer to, I will try my best to answer those during our Q&A session, or you can always email me and I will, answer your questions there as well. So for those who don't know me, I will tell you that there is so much confusion and conflicting information in nutritional science. And I really try to do my very best to make sense of it all. There's so many different nutritionists or people who are self-proclaimed nutrition influencers that we hear from. And all of the different messages can become confusing. And so I like to tell anyone who listens to me that I really do try my very best to be a place you can go to for sound, evidence-based information. And so to do that, I like to explore what I call the duality in nutritional science. One day you hear that the egg is good for you. Tomorrow there'll be a headline telling you that the egg is bad for you. And it's not because nutritional scientists can't make up our minds, it's that there's some truth on both sides. And a lot of people who give nutrition advice don't take the time with the public to explore all of the nuances and the duality that exists within the foods that we consume. And so I really do try my best to help you to explore the do's and don'ts, so that you are empowered to make your own choices. And so we're gonna go through some of those maybe foods or myths that you've heard about before and try to make sense of some of them. So where I like to start is with the vegan diet. And sometimes I'll try to catch people's attention by saying things like, vegans beware. Or I may say, are you saving the animals and harming yourself? Now, I will tell you that my son and I are vegan. So as not that I have anything against the vegan diet, it's just the way that it's being adopted, especially today, that is troublesome. And what I mean by that is having a healthy lifestyle and constructing a healthy diet is about so much more than eliminating animal products. And for some reason, I feel like the discussion has been reduced to that. People think if they simply eliminate, beef, chicken, pork, cheese, ice cream, then they're done. They've done their job. But if you follow my work, you know that I love to, really stick to the old school Whole Foods Market mantra of whole foods, plant-based. Whole foods meaning eating foods from the earth and mainly plants with lots and lots of color. And we've covered that already in other talks, so I won't go into that now. But no matter which health condition you're trying to address or dietary plan you choose, the foundation doesn't change. We still should be building our diets around whole, real foods from the earth. And that's where I think some new vegans are going wrong, because there's so many, fake vegan cheeses, hot dogs, lunch meats, burgers, that it's easy to overconsume heavily processed foods that may also be filled not just with added preservatives, but too much sodium and soy isolates. And so that's the first note I want you to take. Eat real food from the earth with lots and lots of color, because we know those colors correspond to different micronutrients that can actually heal and nourish your organs, cells, and DNA. So I want to move on, because we've got a lot to cover today, away from abstaining from fake meats and eating real food instead. You have to go in the kitchen and cook the meal from scratch. But won't stay there. I'll move on to my other pet peeve when it comes to vegan diets, and that is the use of jackfruit as a meat alternative. I'm being nice today because I'm in my professional space. But when I'm with my friends, I scream about that. Like, stop eating jackfruit as a meat replacement. Why do I say that? Because jackfruit is a carb, is a carbohydrate. It's very high in carbohydrates and very low in protein. So if you're putting jackfruit on top of a hamburger bun or in a tortilla, you just ate a carb on top of a carb. And so there's no wonder why we have vegans who have spiked blood sugar or who are gaining weight, because we are not getting the food just right. And we're so focused, again, on just abstaining from animal products instead of being focused on getting the right combination of macronutrients, that's your fat, protein, and carbohydrates, and a flood of micronutrients. Those are your vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and phytonutrients. So again, eat real food from the earth and mainly plants with lots and lots of color. And instead of focusing on jackfruit and other carbohydrates or fake meat alternatives for your protein, perhaps you get your protein from legumes. That's the whole beans, lentils, peas family. Maybe you consume a plant-based protein powder. There's some very clean ones out there that I love to use. Maybe use a little bit of soy or edamame. And that's the next myth I want to talk about. Some people are afraid of soy. And I've heard so many myths around soy. I've had people say that it will change your hormone levels very drastically. Some people say that soy will make you infertile. Now, again, I talk about the duality in nutritional science, and there may be some truth to that, but we don't want to overstate it or be so fearful of soy that we may be missing out on some medicinal benefits. So let me explain. So yes, some research has shown that if you overindulge in soy, this means people who are consuming soy every day of the week, their whole diet is based around soy products. You may see some change in sperm count and sperm shape. But we also know, again, that only happens at very high consumption rates. And once the soy is removed from the diet, the sperm quality goes back to normal. So these are not lasting changes or lasting results. When you really dig into the research, you see some other things. These changes to sperm count, shape, motility are usually only seen in men who are overweight or obese, because we know weight also disrupts hormonal patterns. And so the combination of the hormonal effects of soy with the hormonal effects of having too much weight on the body is what really causes the disruption in sperm count and sperm shape. So it's not soy by itself, but it's the amount of soy that we consume, and it's the weight that we have in our bodies that could be a compounding effect. So again, that's an example of how we have to look at the whole picture when we're talking about changes in our body that may be connected to food and nutrition. Another thing I want to say about soy is to make sure that we're getting high quality soy that is organic, maybe looking for non-GMO, so very clean sources of soy, and sticking with soy in its whole form, like the edamame bean, maybe the fermented soy, like the tempeh, and please avoid soy isolates. And that takes me back to the meat alternatives. Those soy isolates that you see on the package can sometimes be linked to increased risk for cancer and tumor growth. This is why it's so important to eat real food in its natural form. If you go to Asian countries where soy is a part of the diet, you see lower cancer rates because they're eating soy that's fermented, like miso or tempeh, or they're eating the whole edamame bean. So I hope that makes sense. And you can start to see what I mean about the importance of really getting into the nuances and looking at those dualities so we can have a complete conversation. And now you're more empowered to go make your own choices. So that will end my talk about vegans beware. And I'll move on now to my favorite thing, wine and alcohol. So that's another thing that you may see different in the headlines. You know, you may hear that wine is heart protective. And in another headline, you may hear that alcohol is cancer promoting. Again, both are true. So excessive alcohol consumption can increase your risk of certain cancers, among other health concerns. But for women, 1 glass of red wine per day, I know, just one glass, just one glass for women, and 2 glasses of red wine for men per day can have some benefits for the cardiovascular system. So maybe my recommendation would be, if you enjoy wine, drink it minimally for some heart protection, but beware and don't overdo it because it could increase your risk for cancers and other diseases. So again, that's an example of how there's truth on both sides, but we need to have a more complete conversation so that you're equipped to go make the best choices for yourself and your family. The other thing that I really love is chocolate. But when we think about consuming chocolate for health benefits, I want us to avoid, of course, the Snickers and the Hershey bar. And we're going to turn to our dark chocolate. I recommend at least 70% dark chocolate. And just a few bites of that after a meal can go a long way to increase the blood flow in our brain, to reduce our risk for inflammation and cholesterol. So the dark chocolate can have some medicinal benefits in the body, but again, very small amounts, just a couple of bites, and making sure you're getting chocolate that's 70% dark or higher. The other thing that seems counterintuitive with chocolate, and now I'm going to move to our raw cacao, is that for women who are menopausal, making a dark hot chocolate drink, like by taking the raw cacao powder and putting it specifically in soy milk on the stove and heating it, it can help women who are menopausal to sleep at night. And you would think that wouldn't be the case because you would think it would be a stimulant, but so many women have reported that dark chocolate and hot soy milk actually helps them to sleep and get past insomnia. It also seems to be able to take off the irritability that may come with some of those female hormonal fluctuations. So I even recommend it sometimes for women who are PMSing. For anyone who may be having, just low mood or low energy, I often recommend they add raw cacao to their morning smoothie. So I may use it in the morning as a pick-me-up, but counterintuitively, I may use it in hot soy milk specifically at night to help someone relax and take the edge off. And so that's just another example of how we have some contradictions or some things we may not think would work, but if you try it, you may see some benefits from using your dark chocolate and your raw cacao in different ways. So I hope you're taking all that in. Hope you're, taking down a few notes. I'm slowing down the pace a bit so that we can just all kind of catch our breaths. Because I know I'm going through a lot of information, but I'm doing that because I want to leave a lot more room at the end this time for Q&A, because I want to hear your questions and see what things have been stumping you, and I can try to help if I can. So the next thing I want to move to is coffee. Now, coffee still kind of goes back and forth among researchers. Research is changing around coffee. We see some new reports out that saying 1 to 3 cups per day. I know for coffee drinkers, this is going to be exciting news. 1 to 3 cups per day may reduce one's risk of Parkinson's disease, diabetes, this is type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. Now, the old research still holds true. And right now, there's a lot of conversation among researchers trying to tease out what their best recommendations are. But I want to put the caution out there as well. The old research still holds true that in some individuals, excessive coffee consumption could lead to an increased risk for certain cancers, osteoporosis, and high blood pressure. And for women who are a little bit older in age, I really do recommend that they reduce their coffee consumption because it's linked to osteoporosis, because any caffeine, whether it's coffee or soft drinks, can actually pull the calcium out of the bones. And the calcium will go into the bloodstream to try to offset the effect of the caffeine when our bones really need to hold on to that calcium. So with coffee, you still see there's a little bit on each side that we have to consider. I say that if you're a coffee drinker, just, maybe just, watch your amounts and, also look for symptoms. If after you drink coffee, you feel nervous or irritable, if you're having headaches, rapid heartbeat, or frequent urination, maybe coffee is not agreeing with you. And if you're taking any type of medication, especially medication that is a stimulant, you really want to talk to your doctor and let them know you're a coffee drinker so they can give you some guidance. The thing that is also, I think, a myth-busting point here that I like to bring up, because this is very different than when I was pregnant with my son. Doctors are now saying that pregnant women can consume caffeine and that pregnant women can consume just 1 to 2 cups of coffee per day. When I was pregnant 40 years ago, I feel that like it was that long, 18 years ago, the recommendation was not to drink any caffeine, but that recommendation has changed. And so I want to make sure that we're putting that out there. So it's something you can discuss with your doctor and see if that may be right for you or not. And of course, we're still recommending that children do not drink coffee and abstain from, over consuming any caffeinated beverages. So that kind of ends our discussion about coffee. I'll give you a minute to kind of take some of that in. I'm not sure if you heard the barking earlier, but my dog's name is Coffee. And every time the mail comes, he gets very hyper and very, very excited because something's at the door. So I don't know if you heard him or not, but he's a perfect representation of what Coffee is like. He's very hyper. So I hope you had a moment to take some notes down about, coffee and caffeine. Make sure you, reserve your questions and I'll try to answer them at the end. The next thing I want to talk about is fruit. So a lot of times when we talk about, the foods that we should reduce or eliminate to control blood sugar or to manage weight, fruit will come up. And I want to be careful with this conversation because this is something I would need to know more about you as an individual to really make a solid recommendation. But I know when I'm working with people one-on-one who are diabetic, especially if they're type 2 diabetic, we can find ways to put fruit back into their diet. And I remind people that fruit is not really what caused the disruption in the blood sugar in the first place. Eating too many mangoes, oranges, or bananas is not what really harmed our health. It's all of the processed, fried, fast, sugary foods that we eat that causes us to be at risk for chronic disease. A quick story I'll tell. I was teaching a class here in Detroit, and one of my students was literally sitting in front of me eating chips and a diet soda. I had to eventually say, you're going to put that up in my class. I mean, you can't do this right here in front of me. But he was refusing to take the fruit smoothie I had made. We had made smoothies in class and we were passing them around. And he was saying, no, I can't do the smoothie because it's going to disrupt my blood sugar. So this is an example of how we become so confused about food. He's worried about the strawberries but not worried about the diet soda and the chips. And so I just want to put that in perspective. And so when I'm working with people one-on-one, I can help them to get fruit back into their diet if they are getting rid of the sugar, the added sweeteners in other places, and really getting the rest of the diet kind of clean and solidly, based around whole real foods from the earth. And when we're doing that with people who are still trying to regulate their blood sugar and manage their weight, the fruits I would have them focus on are those that are low in sugar. Those are the foods that will have less of an impact on the blood and on weight. So some examples of low sugar fruits include your citrus fruits, like your oranges, grapefruit, lemons, and lime. Certain berries, those berries that are more tart, like your raspberries, blackberries, and strawberries. I would not include blueberries in this, although they're my favorite, because think about it, they're so plump and juicy and sweet. Those are going to be more likely to spike the blood sugar and to put on weight. So stick with the tart berries, your raspberries in particular, your strawberries, and your blackberries. You also can look at your stone fruits, fruits like peaches, and even like your plums and your nectarines. You can look at your watermelon. That's the one melon that is less likely to spike your blood sugar. I may suggest you avoid the honeydew and the cantaloupe and maybe just focus on the watermelon. And that's surprising to people because watermelon is so sweet. But I'll tell you why we can consume watermelon in just a second. And the other foods that you may want to consume as a low sugar fruit would be specifically your Asian pears. Not all pears, but your Asian pears tend to be lower in sugar. So I'm looking for fruit that per serving, so we're talking about a whole peach or a whole small orange, maybe half of a grapefruit because it's larger, or a cup of berries. Those are some examples of your serving sizes. I'm looking for fruit that have maybe 12 grams of sugar or less per serving, around 12 grams of sugar or less per serving. Now, I mentioned watermelon and how it may be surprising that it would be considered a low sugar food. Well, I want you to do your own research around the glycemic index and the glycemic load. For a long time, diabetes educators were just recommending that you kind of look at the glycemic index and see each food score. Foods will get a score from 0 to 100, with the scores at the lower end of the spectrum being those that would be considered low sugar foods. But the glycemic index really isn't enough. The glycemic index really tells you how quickly food will spike the blood sugar, how quickly a food will spike the blood sugar. But the glycemic load goes a little bit further by telling you how much sugar your blood will absorb from each food. So the load gives you a little bit more information. So for watermelon, for example, it's kind of high on the glycemic index because it spikes the blood sugar quickly. But when you look at the glycemic load for watermelon, it's very low because not much of that sugar actually disrupts the blood sugar in the body. And so if you go to harvard.edu, so Harvard University's website, and just Google glycemic index versus glycemic load, you'll see a lot of articles really breaking this down. Another way you can find it is probably just doing a Google search for glycemic index versus glycemic load, Harvard University or harvard.edu, but without going to their website, and the articles will come up that way as well. So hopefully that gives you some guidance around how to, include some tart or less sugary fruits into your diet. The final thing I want to talk about today is our healthy fats. I save this for last because sometimes this is a little bit controversial for people, because if you are, following media reports and people we see on TV, there's a lot of, talk about the benefits of, consuming olive oil and, healthy oils like, coconut oil. And I will say that, yes, we do need our healthy fats. But if you know me, you know that my mantra is whole foods. These are foods from the earth, the way you find them in nature, mainly plants with lots and lots of color. So whole foods, plant-based, whole foods, plant-based, whole foods, plant-based with lots and lots of color is the mantra. We sing this when we're eating, when we're going out to restaurants, when we're making our grocery list, when we're shopping in the store. We're reminding ourselves whole food, plant-based, whole foods, plant-based with lots and lots of color. So when you take any oil, you've completely taken it out of its natural packaging. You've taken the oil and you've thrown away the nut or the avocado or the seed that contains all the fiber and all of the other nutrients. So what I would love for us to do is to get our healthy fats from whole, real food from the earth. Now, I often remind you guys that that mantra of whole foods, plant-based, follows us no matter what we're doing. Even when I'm making my protein powder selection, I'm looking for protein powder, I'm looking for whole real food, right? If you're gonna, look for a supplement, I'm looking for supplements made from whole real foods. And when I'm looking for my fats, I'm looking for whole real food in its complete packaging. So some examples of that would be your walnuts, your flaxseed, hemp seed, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. And anytime you're getting your healthy fats from seeds or nuts, please remember, just half your handful a day is all you need. And make sure those nuts and seeds are unroasted and unsalted. I can't get into the whole talk about that right now. Just know we don't want to add all that salt to our food and to our diet. And also know that when you take any fat and you heat them at very high temperatures, those fats tend to form free radicals and can become more carcinogenic. And so remember, your nuts and seeds are always whole foods, whole real foods from the earth. That's how you're getting your fats. And those nuts and seeds, just half your handful, unroasted and unsalted. So I hope you see how the nuts and seeds fit into that mantra of whole foods, plant-based. I hope you see that's only half your handful and that should be unroasted and unsalted. Why? Because your nuts and seeds are very high in calories. Just half your handful, that's just 8 walnuts, maybe 15 almonds, are already almost 200 calories. The same thing with 2 or 3 tablespoons of your flaxseed or your hemp seed that you may add to your oatmeal or to your salad or to your smoothie. That is just enough to give you all your healthy fats for the day and to give you almost 200 calories. Think about adding those 200 calories to your oatmeal, to your salad, to your smoothie. Now your smoothie is 500 calories perhaps. So this is why I want us to pull back on healthy fats so we're not overdoing calories. Same thing with avocado. One medium avocado is about 400 calories, maybe 360 calories. So half your handful, almost 200 calories just for half your handful of avocado or just half of the avocado. So although I love going to a Mexican restaurant and getting my chips, salsa, and guacamole with my my glass of margaritas with my girlfriends, I have to do that very minimally. That's something I do once in a blue moon because I'm aware of how much fat I'm consuming when I do that. So we get our healthy fats from our mantra of whole plant-based foods. Now, I'll say a little bit about oils and then I'll end and we'll open up for Q&A. When we think about oils as a healthy food, especially like our avocado, olive, and coconut oils, we know that they are better for us than lard. They may be better on us than lard or butter. They may, be a little bit gentler on our cardiovascular system because they don't contain as much saturated fat. And so some of the studies that have been done on oils happen in the Mediterranean. You hear about the Mediterranean diet, but it really happened in one village, the village of Crete. And when we look at that village, it's not just olive oil they're consuming, their entire lifestyle is different than the standard American diet or the standard American lifestyle. You know, they're on the ocean, they can go swimming in the ocean with a nice sea water that can pull toxins out of the body. Just being in that ocean air can pull toxins out of the skin. People are walking more and cycling more. They're driving less, they're sitting less, they're eating together in community. They're laughing, talking, drinking red wine as they have dinner. They're eating mainly vegetables, fruit, and some fish, and they're using some olive oil. So the whole lifestyle is different. The only thing we took away from it, it seems, is drink olive oil and drink coconut oil. And so I want us to look at the entire diet. And when we do, we can see that the lifestyle really follows what comes out of the recommendations around the blue zones. So spend your own time, research the blue zones, but these are communities around the world where people are living longer lives, living up to 100 years of age and still being active and mobile in their homes and communities. And when we look at the blue zones, it's a whole lifestyle that includes laughter, fellowship, you know, clean eating, clean food, exercise, and a number of other variables that positively impact our health. And so when we look at oils, plant-based oils, and I know researchers who actually make these comparisons, they may give someone, you know, a cheeseburger, and they will put monitors on a person's heart to see how the body responds to that. And you may see the heart start to tighten and constrict as it's trying to push all of that fat through the system. They may then give a person, you know, just greens with no oil on it at all, and see the heart is very stable. Now, the third day, they may give the person a little bit of bread and olive oil. And what you see is that the heart may constrict very slightly, like you can barely notice it. And so this is where the recommendation comes to eat olive oil, because it has such a less impact on the heart and cardiovascular system. But it did have some impact, but very, very slight. But when you think about that, it makes sense. It's still grease, it's still oil, it's still fat. If you were to fry chicken or fried turkey, fried fish, you wouldn't want to take that bucket of oil and pour it down your kitchen sink. Why wouldn't you? Your first thought would be that oil is going to clog my drains. And so when we think about our plumbing, our bodies, our arteries, our veins, our vessels, it could also be sticky inside of our bodies as well. So that's all we're really going to say about oil. I'll just end by saying, think about how many calories you're consuming for every tablespoon of oil, any kind, olive, avocado, coconut, sesame, safflower, is 120 calories per tablespoon. 120 calories per tablespoon. So imagine if you're pouring all of that over your salad or into your skillet to saute something or fry something. Imagine that you may be adding dozens, hundreds, or thousands of calories to your food. And so I will stop there with my comments covering some of the myth busters in nutritional science, and ask David to drop the summary into the chat so you will have a chance to go look at some of the high-level notes from today's discussion, and let me know if you have any questions that I may be able to answer. So I will end there and open it up for Q&A. Let me go.
Oh, I'm here. I'm trying to get the summary into the chat box.
Okay, I'm looking real quick. Someone asked me, what is paleo? How do I give a simple answer to our customers? Okay, so I would say that the paleo diet is one that strives to go back to how we naturally ate. There's some controversy around that, and so I try to answer this question carefully, but really it's a diet that's focused more on, you know, animal products and less on carbohydrates. So they will focus more on eating, you know, beef and greens and leaving out the bread and other forms of carbohydrates. And there's some distinctions and variations within the paleo diet. And so it depends on who's making the recommendation. Some people will also eliminate beans and legumes from that diet. So it kind of depends on how strict someone's being. But it's really, a focus on, more animal products and less carbs. Now we'll go back to the, I'm going to Q&A. There's a lot of vegan products being added to our menu. Yeah, so I would just, I don't want to get into a lot of controversy around, meat alternatives. I'll just say that a lot of times when we sell food in our store, it's the same thing you see at any restaurant. We're selling food because it's what people want. It tastes good, it's delicious. And I don't know if anyone's really making any huge health claims around it. Some people are looking for meat alternatives because they don't want to eat animal products. I have a lot of people who tell me they don't really care about, the processed meat alternatives or the preservatives and the sodium. They're trying to save animals, and they're willing to make that sacrifice for themselves for the sake of animals. So I can't get into why someone is making those dietary changes. As a medical nutritionist, all I can do is give the information that I have and say, if we're looking to make a switch to a vegan diet for the purpose of promoting health and well-being, then we probably need to look at eliminating the meat alternatives. Again, people make the choice to change their diet for a number of different reasons. I'll give you myself as an example. I started eating a vegan diet in 1990, and it had nothing to do with health at the time. I was in college, and I was doing it because I was an animal rights activist. I didn't want to eat animals anymore. It wasn't until maybe 3 years later that I made the switch to do it for health. So people come to this lifestyle for a number of different personal reasons. I'm only speaking to what's best for health and well-being. Let me go back to the Q&A.
Okay,
oh, you have it now? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I did get all of the summaries in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
So take a look at those as you come up with your questions. So the next question we have, can you pulverize nuts and seeds to create a binder when making a vegetable burger?
Oh, yes, you can. And so there's all kinds of wonderful, ways to use nuts and seeds to make, burgers. I make some neat balls for pasta. I make a great one, like a walnut meat that I can use in tortillas. So you can have all kinds of fun to make tacos and different things using nuts and beans. You also can then make your own like sour cream or sour cream and like Alfredo sauce using cashews and different nuts. So yes, you can really use the internet to Google all kinds of fun nut meat alternatives, bean meat alternatives. You can figure out how to make your cashew cream sauce, your cashew sour cream, your Alfredo sauce using real whole foods. The point is to start with the commitment to real whole foods, and then allow the internet to be your friend and to be your guide. There's all kinds of cool ways to find great recipes. You can go to the Host Cities Foundation's website for some recipes. You can go to my website, akuawoolbright.com, for some recipes. I love Forks Over Knives. There's a great website, Feasting at Home. Or just go to recipes.com and Google your favorite thing and find all kinds of alternatives. Just have fun playing with your food.
And definitely let us know how those new recipes come out. Tag us on social media. We would love to see how awesome your dishes come out, how they taste, and maybe we can share, have a community of recipes out there. Okay, so next question. How do you feel about kiwi as a fruit for health?
I love kiwi. I love fruit. I haven't really looked at the sugar composition of kiwi, but again, this is something you can Google on your own. This is why I try to give you guys the recommendations so that if I don't mention a particular fruit, you can go look for 12 grams of sugar or less per serving. So just do a quick Google search and ask, how many grams of sugar is in a whole kiwi? And if it's 12 grams or less, and the fewer grams, the better, then that could be a great choice. But If you're not concerned about your blood sugar, if you're not concerned about weight, just eat the kiwi. That recommendation of watching the grams of sugar in fruit is only meant for those people who've been told they can't eat fruit because maybe they are pre-diabetic, or maybe they're trying to lose 10 to 30 pounds. But for a lot of people, it's okay. 12 grams per kiwi. See, eat your kiwi, have 2 of them. Have 2 kiwi. I love it. Thank you, Bob. Thank you for sharing that. Eat 2 kiwi. I love them. You can do all kinds of cool things, whether put in your salad, just eat it as a snack. Yeah, enjoy your food. Again, the concern around sugar is only for those people who, for some reason, have to limit their consumption of fruit each day.
Okay, and then real quick before we jump into more questions, I did post the summaries in the chat box. They're kind of lengthy. They have a little title at the top and then a description, but we can also include it in the follow-up email that we send to everyone who registered for the event. So don't worry if you can't find it in the chat box, we will get you that summary. So don't worry about that. Okay, next question. Back to soy. I've heard soy and thyroid disease don't mix well. Any thoughts?
I'm sorry, I was reading the chat. Can you,
Oh.
can you tell me that again?
Sure. I've heard that soy and thyroid disease don't mix well. Any thoughts?
Okay, so that's where soy can be one of those sticking points, right? And so let me back up. Like I said, for the sugar, limiting the sugar to 12 grams or less was really for a certain population. Let me say the same thing for soy. So for most people, the average American consuming real whole edamame, miso, or fermented soy like tempeh a couple of times a month, not every week, not every day, a couple of times a month, will not have any negative effects on their body. And most research shows that soy products in its whole form can really be medicinal. It can help to lower risk for cancer, diabetes, cholesterol, high blood pressure, and a number of other conditions. So for the average person, soy can be medicinal. Here are the places where we need to have some caution. If you are a man who's overweight and you want to protect your sperm count, motility, and shape, because maybe you're having some fertility issues, I have seen doctors take those men off of soy just temporarily to get their fertility in check. And then you see their bodies go right back to normal as soon as the soy is removed from the diet. For men who've had the issues with soy and fertility, almost every time is a man who's overweight and who's over consuming soy. They're eating soy several times a week. They're building their diet around soy. The second group that need to really watch their soy consumption would be the women who have the breast cancer gene. And women, please go get tested. Your doctors can tell you have that, the gene that can make you at a higher risk for breast cancer. You can go find that out, get that tested. For those women, it's about 2.5% to 5% of the population. We do recommend that they maybe not eliminate their soy consumption, but they drastically reduce it just a few times a quarter, once a month, very, very minimally. And then finally, for people who have thyroid disease, this may be something you really want to work with your doctor on, because soy does have some hormone-like effects that in some people can disrupt the function of the thyroid. So when we're talking about eliminating soy products, we're talking about, of course, we're only eating whole, real food, not soy isolates and the veggie hot dog. We're talking about the edamame bean or the miso, the tempeh. There's those 3 groups that may really need to look at their consumption of soy. And this is how it gets twisted in the media. Someone will hear this part of the talk and go, oh, see, soy is bad, I can't eat soy. But this is why it's so important to understand the nuances and the duality in nutritional science. I always say when people ask me questions, they want a quick response. Like, well, I can't give you a quick response because if this, then that. But if this, then that. It changes based on your personal circumstances. And this is why I say I try to be the go-to place to help you make sense of it. So hopefully that answered your question and gave you a little bit more guidance.
All right, so we have a few, like three more really good questions that came through. So first of the three, this came in when you were talking about coffee and the risks of coffee. So does the same go for decaf coffee?
Decaf coffee has another set of issues and how it has been processed to take the caffeine out. And so with decaf coffee, we have other issues that we have to be concerned about. So from my recommendation is always, if you're going to do a thing, just do the thing. So if you're going to drink coffee, I would almost rather you just drink the coffee. Close your ears. Don't hear me say this. If you're going to drink the soda, just drink the soda, but don't drink the soda. But if you're going to drink the soda, I'd rather you drink the soda than drink the diet soda, because the diet soda, the decaf coffee, has another set of issues. And we see this with the baked lays and the sugar-free candy. Those things end up having more problems. So we don't want to try to find a workaround to the recommendation. We want to follow the recommendation and do as it lays out. Just limit the amount of coffee to just 1 or 3 cups per day. And you can stick close to the 1 cup per day. That's even better. And you can take some time to kind of research on your own, like some of the risk of decaffeinated coffee and what happens when the caffeine is pulled out.
Right, and this next question I'm actually personally excited about. I follow the FODMAP of eating. So what do you think about FODMAP eating? I've recently discovered sensitivity to onions and garlic.
Oh, okay, I like that one. So for people who don't know what that is, can you put that in the chat? It's all capital letters, FODMAP. So it's an acronym. So someone thank you for putting that in the chat for me. So, and you can look up the guidelines for this diet. And it really goes back to one of my other lectures, and it's around food triggers. There are certain foods, maybe mushrooms or those nightshades, tomatoes, apples, that may trigger a response in people. Maybe you're having some weird stomach bloating and you can't figure out why. You're always bloated, or maybe you cannot lose weight, and you're a person who's really honest about that. You know you're eating low calories. You know you're not over consuming. You know you're eating real whole foods from the earth. You're eating kale and mushrooms, and you're walking and doing yoga and you're doing Pilates, and the weight is just stubborn. Sometimes this FODMAP diet can be used to help identify those food triggers and sensitivities and to give you some relief. So I will say that some of the things that can help with are those digestive issues. I mentioned bloating, but also like leaky gut. Anytime you may feel like you have a sluggish or slow bowel motility, sometimes doing this diet, at least temporarily, can help you to get the gut microbiome back in balance. Now, I really suggest you do this with a doctor who practices functional medicine. And this is why. You can do it on your own. It's going to be safe if you do it on your own. But the benefit of doing it with a doctor who practices functional medicine in particular is that they can give you a little bit more guidance. They can do your stool testing. You have to poop in a bag and keep it in your refrigerator for 3 days, and you take it to your doctor. It's so much fun. I've done this a couple of times. But they can really look at your stool before and after the FODMAP diet and see if the gut flora changed. And if they may discover that, yes, it's this particular food, or maybe it's not the food at all. Maybe you need to add a digestive enzyme, or maybe you need to add a probiotic. They can help you really tease that out and see exactly what's disrupting your body and causing you to have symptoms. And the good news is that sometimes they can help you to work those foods back into the diet. Like if you really love apples, sometimes they can work with you to get the apples back in. And I know some doctors who actually cycle their patients. They put them on the FODMAP diet. They may give them a probiotic. Some even give them an antibiotic to get the gut microbiome back in a healthy place. They eliminate all of these trigger foods. But then after 3 or 4 months, they can add some of the foods back in. But they know that that patient is probably going to have to repeat the cycle of FODMAPing and probiotics or antibiotics a year later or 2 years later. So they may cycle their patients on and off of the diet, because for some people, the diet is very hard to maintain. And I'll end that by saying The people who have the hardest time with this diet are vegans, because all of our food is on the diet. All of our food is on the list. So it's very hard if you're vegan to follow the FODMAP diet because beans are on there. Well, where am I getting my protein? I mean, apples are on there. How can I live without an apple? Like everything I love is on that doggone list. And so I'm very pleased to know that some doctors are actually working with their patients to kind of cycle on and off so that you can enjoy some things and just find that balance. So hopefully that recommendation helps someone. So if you want to find a doctor who practices functional medicine and to learn more about functional medicine, go to the Institute for Functional Medicine. The Institute for Functional Medicine. Maybe David can put that in the chat. And you can actually search for a provider using your zip code, and you can find a functional medicine practitioner near you. Okay.
All right,
else?
so up next is actually just a comment. Just made lentil meatball soup from the newest FOK. My meat eating husband loved it.
Oh, good. I love that. Yes, if anyone else has any suggestions for your favorite fruits or ways to make some meat substitutes using real whole foods from the earth, drop them into the chat. I mentioned trying to get oil out of the diet. So if you have any cool oil-free homemade dressings for your salads, you can put those in the chat as well. We'd like to hear from you and learn from you also. If you have a favorite dark chocolate candy bar, we would love to know that one. So yeah, add that. And everyone has some great suggestions for some nice cabs, some red wine. I'm always looking for a nice cab recommendation.
Also, feel free to tag us on social media. We'd love to share that out on our channels if you have a really great recipe that people would maybe benefit from.
Yes.
Okay, so let's see. 2 questions.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on collagen powders? And then I guess I'll throw this one in too. And what are your thoughts on stevia or other alternative sweeteners?
Okay. And so when it comes to alternative anything, it's what I said before, I just really want us to not try to find the workarounds, really. And so when it comes to any added sweetener, and I always say this by any name, anything that ends in OSE, sucrose, fructose, dextrose, anything that ends in OL, those sugar alcohols like erythritol, sorbitol, any added sweetener, cane sugar, maple syrup, agave, honey, all of it. We want to really just see how much we can limit it in the diet. But if you're going to look for a sugar or sweetener alternative, please don't do the fake stuff. I don't know the names, like the Equal. I don't even know the names of them. Those sugar packets, those fake sugar packets. Make sure you're not doing that. And if you're going to go to stevia or monk fruit, something like that, okay, that's coming from a real plant. The only reason I say to have some caution there is a lot of times people are trying to find a way to still eat cookies and cake and sugary beverages. And so we want to limit those in the diet regardless. But if you're looking for something just to put a little bit in your tea or a little bit on top of your oatmeal, that's okay. But you know what? If that's all you're doing, I don't care if you use the honey or the maple syrup. I had still cut oatmeal earlier today, and I just drizzled like my little Z on top of my maple syrup, on top of my oatmeal with maple syrup. Just a Z, a little bit of cinnamon, my blueberries, my pomegranate seeds, tossed all together, and I was happy. So if you're eating the sugar minimally to begin with, you don't have to really worry about whether it was stevia, honey, or maple syrup. I find that people who are really wanting to go the stevia route is because they want to have sweet tea, they want to have cake, pie, and cookies, and we're already pulling those back in the diet to begin with. If you are making desserts, I'd rather you do that with dried fruit or maybe pureed fruit, so you get the whole food, which will have more benefits into the diet. Hopefully that makes sense. If I'm making a cookie or a pudding out of pureed fruit, what did I just do? I added some sweet to my diet and some joy, but I still get all the benefits from all those micronutrients, all the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and phytonutrients. I want every bite to have bang. I want every bite to be medicinal. The stevia is not going to really give me that. So I hope you see how I'm making those choices so that I'm getting the most out of everything that I'm consuming. And for some people, too much stevia can cause some gastric distress and some upset stomachs. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you find a way to consume the sweeteners minimally. It's a little bit in your tea, a little bit on your oatmeal. And if you're making dessert, that you use some real whole fruit so that you get all those micronutrients. And there's lots of recipes online if you do a Google search. Someone asked about the collagen. I don't really know a lot about collagen powders. And was it collagen powder or extract they asked about?
Powders.
Powders.
Collagen powders.
I don't know a whole lot about it, but what I know that my doctor who practiced functional medicine, I keep mentioning functional medicine. I love that if you have a good doctor, I'm talking about a medical doctor who also studies functional medicine, I feel like I get the best of both worlds. They have that conservative, traditional medical background with all these other alternative practices. Like my doctor is doing acupuncture and chiropractic services in her offices. She's doing Reiki and massage. She's doing aromatherapy. She studied Chinese medicine. So I'm getting both. And she has a whole lab in her office where she can take your blood work. It's just, to me, she's both doctors at one time. It's amazing. Her whole staff is wonderful. And I say that, so when you're looking for a health practitioner, maybe you can use it as inspiration to find somebody who can really go the distance with you and offer you both perspectives. Because again, I love the duality. So even with my doctor, I found someone who can give me both perspectives, both sides. And what she says about collagen powder is that it's not something that she recommends because consuming it through the digestive system, it doesn't really get it into your bones and joints as much as they may claim to. And so I have not done my own research on it, so I can't speak to it authoritatively from my own perspective. I just know when I've asked her about it, she doesn't believe that consuming it really does a lot for the bones and the joints. It may provide some relief. It may, ease up some of the joint pain, maybe remove some of the inflammatory responses, but it's not like it's going to rebuild your joints, ligaments, and hopefully that makes sense. That maybe there's some benefit, but let's not overstate how much it can do through consumption.
Yes, thank you. And we did get to all of the questions. I do want to thank you personally myself, because I know from a previous session, the dark chocolate advice really helped me. So I have the ultimate weakness for cookies. If you put a cookie in front of me, I'm going to eat it really fast, probably. So the dark chocolate tip really helped. I'm really excited to start paying attention to the fruits that I ate now and like how much sugar they have. That's the new one for me. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, David. I hope other people are getting their own personal takeaways. And if there's something I ever say that you don't agree with, or that you just need more clarity about, please reach out to me. Don't hesitate to email me at akua.woolbright@wholefoods.com. David's gonna put my email address in the chat. You can find more information about me on the Whole Cities Foundation website. There's some articles and some videos and a lot more information you can learn there as well. And I have a lot of medical articles on my website, akuawoolbright.com. So I want to be a go-to place for you. And please don't ever hesitate to email me. Sometimes people are shy about doing that. I enjoy it. This is what I'm here for. Whole Cities Foundation pays me to be your nutritionist. So make me work. Give me some stuff to do. Email me. I will be there for you and do everything I can to support you and your own healthy eating journey. And I look forward to seeing you back here for the next talk.